Hey guys, welcome into the YouTube channel once again. I really appreciate the response that I got on the last conference realignment video. And as you know, conference realignment continues to change by the minute. So I've got another update for you here today. If you're new, please subscribe to the channel. If you are a K-State fan, you definitely need to do that. But even if you're a Big 12 fan, a regional college football fan, I'm going to be talking a lot about conference realignment from basically a regional perspective here. What's going on in particular with the 8 Big 12 schools left in the dust right now. I grew up with the Big 8. I grew up with the Big 12. I care deeply about this league and about these teams. And, man, right now there is a lot going on. So today, Texas and Oklahoma obviously made it official. If you have been living under a rock and had not seen that yet, Texas and Oklahoma made it official that they will not be extending their grant of rights past 2025 with the Big 12. So basically, they took the first step, like the first official step toward leaving the conference. Still has to get sorted out with the SEC. It is sounding like that could still be something that happens within a week, within 2 weeks, somewhere along those lines as far as the SEC getting that nailed down. And then how long does Oklahoma and Texas, do Oklahoma and Texas actually stay in the league? Anybody's guess, but it seems to lean towards shorter rather than longer based on them being able to negotiate out of the contract. And I think they're positioning here and saying, hey, we're prepared to sit out the rest of the contract is all about legal matters, right? Like that's the smart way to go legally to say, hey, we are trying outwardly to fulfill this contract and then work from there. Also, if the Big 12 blows up, it would be much easier for them to get out of the contract and the grant of rights and all of that very quickly and very easily. Now, what really matters, what happens to the rest of these 8 teams, right? If you're a K-State fan, if you're an Oklahoma State fan, Tech fan, whoever it might be, and you're looking at this now thinking like, what happens to all of these schools? Even if you're Mizzou fan, I see you Mizzou fans in the comments there, and I appreciate you guys, by the way. I miss you. I'm sure you're very interested in what happens to your old friends here. Everything today. Now, before I state what I'm about to say and where it feels like the tea leaves are reading and what they are saying right now about the remaining 8 teams, I just want to give this disclaimer. The best analogy I can give you about trying to give like a daily update on what it seems like is going to happen with the remaining 8 teams here is that it is like telling you what the worth of Bitcoin is today. There's an answer for what it feels like today, the most likely outcome is, but that doesn't mean that tomorrow it could be wildly and drastically different, just like predicting the price of Bitcoin, right? Shoots way up and then shoots way back down from one day to the next. And that could absolutely be the case here with how quickly things change, right? Everything was fine. What's the Kanye quote from Kanye Jay-Z? It was all good just a week ago. Man, a week ago, everything seemed perfectly normal and fine. We had no idea of any of this. That's how fast it can all change, okay? But that said, right now what I've heard the most about is the Big 12 teams, the remaining 8 teams banding together and trying to add teams from the AAC. Basically because it would be the only option for most of these schools, right? Like I don't think that's anybody's first option, especially when you start thinking about the finances of it, because the hope is, according to The Athletic, this was shared in a really good story and a really good read from Max Olson of The Athletic, the hope is that if you were to go add, and the schools that I hear the most about, Memphis, UCF, Houston, for sure, for 3 of the 4, and Cincinnati would be the 4th with maybe, I don't know, maybe you're talking like South Florida. I would probably cap it at Cincinnati. There are the teams that I'm hearing the most about that you could go add from the AAC. The hope is, according to sources within the Big 12 and The Athletic, that could get you about $20 million a year on the TV deal, which is roughly half of what Big 12 schools are making right now, which is like $37.7 million. So you see why that really should, for every school that's involved in this, that should be like option number 2. Backup option here, because if you can float off to the Pac-12 somehow, or you can piece off to the Big 10, then you need to do that because you're going to be making way more money than that. The projections are all north of $60 million for the next few years for the Big 10, the SEC, if they add Oklahoma and Texas, $67, $64 million per year. Those are the projected numbers there. So you're talking 3 times what that Big 12 TV deal would be. So you want to branch off to one of those P5 conferences if you can. But the way it is all moving right now, it makes it seem like right now the Big 10 and the Pac-12 are not that interested in being active about pursuing the Big 12 leftovers. And that makes a ton of sense. Why would they be? Now, here's the evidence first. Like Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, he wrote a column today about all this and updating it when he was talking about the Big 10, for instance, right? Because there's all this chatter about the Big 10 in Kansas. And I did tell you, by the way, in my last video, I had been told that report about Kansas having a call with the Big Ten was incorrect, and Brandon Marcello over the weekend from 24/7 Sports and National College Football Reporter stated just that report was incorrect and it did not happen. Dennis Dodd in his column today mentioned the Big Ten trying to go after Pac-12 schools, namely USC. Then he mentioned even taking a shot or a pass at Clemson and Florida State. Then got to, all right, then maybe Kansas. 1, 2, and 3. And that's Dennis Dodd, who, by the way, is based in the Kansas City area. So is inclined to be more kind to Kansas than other media members would be if they're living on the coast, right? They're not going to be thinking about it as much. And frankly, I think would be more realistic about where Kansas actually sits in all of this. So there was that. The Athletic article from Andy Staples, where he's talking about the Pac-12 having half of their teams, the Big Ten go pursue half of the Pac-12, pluck them off, and pull them in. Look, the Big Ten is thinking, pardon the pun, big. They're thinking big because Texas and Oklahoma just got added to the SEC. The SEC is the conference that legitimately competes with the Big Ten. The Big Ten is really the one legitimate competitor there. I understand the ACC has Clemson, but it's just Clemson and everybody else. The Big Ten can compete, and they're looking at it saying, like, man, they just made a huge move. We need to make a corresponding huge move. And the way to do that is not to add Kansas and Iowa State. That will land with a thud, and then is that actually bringing you more monetary value than it would be worth to split the pie two more ways, right? So I'm not saying Kansas and Iowa State to the Big Ten couldn't happen, but right now there's not chatter about that because everything is moving toward the Big Ten trying to take a big swing, as they should. As they should. If I were Kevin Warren in the Big Ten, that's what I would be doing now too. I believe it was the Dennis Dodd article. A lot of the chatter is moving toward like, hey, is this going to be like Sankey and the SEC just like running everything like they're Mark Emmert and breaking off and doing their own thing? Like we're moving toward that kind of stuff, not the 10 years ago, like, oh, let's see how we can rearrange some of these pieces. It feels like if you're thinking about Kansas and Iowa State to the Big Ten right now, you're thinking about checkers where the Big Ten's trying to play chess first. It may come back to checkers, but they're going to try and make a real chess move here first. So especially if you talk to folks like in the TV industry, that's where it's all going. Like, man, their eyes are lighting up. Like, can the Big Ten add Pac-12 powers and put together their conference, their new conference like that? The other thing is the Athletic reported that Big 12 schools internally are pretty fearful that the Pac-12 would not want them because of academic standards, which is something we've heard really from the beginning there. There are cultural differences academically, and then like the religious aspect of like TCU and Baylor that don't seem to jive that much with the Pac-12 and the sensibilities out there. And look, that's a pretty easy thing to understand. The demographics and sensibilities of what people care about in the Midwest and out on the West Coast are very different. And so could you clear those hurdles? Again, I think the Pac-12 has bigger fish to fry, namely right now worrying about keeping their own, trying to keep USC and UCLA and their biggest brands, right? That has to be the concern of the Pac-12. And they may be thinking like, all right, is there something big that we can do as well? Their options are going to be more limited than the Big Ten, but everybody is thinking much larger than trying to go after the wallflowers that are the 8 teams left in the Big 12 right now. Because, this is not anything with sourcing, right? But just think about this. All these teams that are left from the Big 12 they would desperately join a conference in a second, be it the ACC, Big 10, or Pac-12, or SEC, I suppose you can float that too. They would join any of those conferences in a second right now because financial difference is so drastic. Again, you're talking about the difference between revamped AAC, Big 12, $20 million a year, or finding a $60 million a year lifeboat. That's giant. If there is that sense of desperation with these 8 teams that are sitting here, why would you ever move quickly right now if you're another league to go add them? You'll be able to have them at basically any time. You're going to take your bigger shots first and then work your way down towards that. So all of this makes sense. And I think it's just natural, like especially being, obviously I'm in Manhattan, Kansas, being based in the Midwest and being based around where these schools are at that we're talking about here. Like the fans around here and all the chatter around here is going to be like, well, where's our landing spot? Obviously we have to be coveted and we're going to land somewhere. When in reality, like the big picture, it's a cold, harsh reality for everybody around here because in the college football world, that's not what anybody is thinking about. May get there. And again, much like Bitcoin, it could change very drastically tomorrow. It could change very drastically in a week, 2 weeks, whatever it might be. But for right now, the tea leaves are saying there are bigger things at play here, and you're going to have to wait. That's the thing that's going to kill everybody. You're going to have to wait if you are a K-State, Oklahoma State, Kansas, Iowa State to know your fate. You know, another thing from the Athletic article and something that I continue to hear when you talk to people is like, hey, the word across the Big 12 is right now, we don't want anybody to panic. And what we're going to have to do is band together and go try to add teams and get whatever TV deal we can. That's all great, but you're not going to know, like that is not something I would anticipate to happen quickly. And it's something that could be blown up in a millisecond if West Virginia starts getting the ACC interest in the ACC invite, or if it is Kansas and Iowa State to the Big Ten, or Oklahoma State and Tech to the Pac-12. Like the second you get a sniff of that, it will change everything very quickly. And who knows when that might happen. You know, I had a lot of K-State fans in my mentions on Twitter over the weekend. And by the way, at JL Kurtz, JLKURTZ, if you want to follow me on Twitter. I had a lot of K-State fans in my mention saying over the weekend, like, man, why haven't we heard anything from K-State? Like, how do we know that they're working behind the scenes and trying to make something happen? And that's where I had to just kind of tell people, like, look, and this is not just K-State centric. Again, for all 8 teams here, you're just going to be antsy. And there's not really a concrete answer anybody can give you that I think would really make you feel any better. Like, we did get a statement. I'll read the statement from K-State. We did get a statement finally at about 5 o'clock today here on Monday from K-State. It says, quote, with the recent announcement of our 2 institutions electing to depart the conference following the 2024-25 season, K-State and the additional 7 members of the Big 12 are eager to collaborate and position ourselves for continued success. We have terrific leadership at the conference, university, and state board of regent levels, and our fans should know that every effort is being made to put K-State and the Big 12 conference in the best position moving forward, end quote. K-State Athletics Director Gene Taylor and President Richard Myers. I don't like, what did that do? What did that do? That did not make me feel any better, and it shouldn't make you feel any better. And I just don't, you know, people want answers. I get it. People are antsy, and I am sympathetic to that. I am empathetic to that because I understand the drastic ramifications this is going to have on many, many people, entire towns, and the local economy of Manhattan. It could have a massive impact on that depending on what happens here to K-State. That doesn't mean that there are great answers out there now, and it doesn't mean that great answers are coming anytime soon. And there are not Big Ten and Pac-12 leaders lining up to go set up phone calls or go reach out or try to knock down the door to land these schools right now. Because here's another thing, and this is all based off of Dennis Dodd's reporting. Okay, we'll see. He had stated that an administrator told him there's a loophole in the Big 12 TV contract that states, like, hey, if membership changes, the payout's going to change, and that it could drop from $37 million a year for every school to $9 million a year for every school if and when Texas and Oklahoma do officially leave. Now, that is a big time drop, and maybe that's even too drastic to get down to $9 million per team, right? But either way, it gives you kind of a ballpark of what the value is of the 8 teams that are left. Okay, if the value of the 8 teams that are left, we can even round it up and say are $10 million per year per team. That's not much added value when you parse that out to team by team. And that's why, like, you can say all you want about Kansas basketball and Iowa State and Matt Campbell, but like the Big Ten's going to look at that and be like, man, the TV partners here say that all 8 of those schools together are worth about $10 million per year. Why in the hell are we going to rush to go add those teams? That's the problem here for the schools that are left in the lurch of Texas and what Texas and Oklahoma did. That's why you're going to have to really wait it out to see if what happens is the Big 12 stays together and is solid, or everybody starts splintering off and they do have some life rafts and options. I don't feel like we're headed there very fast. And right now, as of this second today, most of the chatter I'm hearing around here and around the league is about, hey, let's try to band together and make this thing happen. Hey, I really appreciate everybody that watched the videos from the other day. Continue to follow, click subscribe if you haven't already. Again, not just if you're a K-State fan, if you are a regional college football fan here in the Midwest, if you are a Big 12 fan of one of the 8 remaining schools, I'm going to try and keep you updated on what's going on there, what I'm hearing, and give you some opinion and my take on it as well here. So subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter at JL Kurtz. And man, just keep bearing with me. This is obviously a fascinating time, but it's also an incredibly unnerving time in college athletics. Look, it sucks. All right, I'll just say it like that for all you guys. I'm with you. This sucks. This sucks. This sucks. This sucks. If you are a fan or anybody associated with a Big 12 school, not fun times, let's try and make it a little better here on the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and go Cats.